"You are cursed and miserable," Mary's 3 husbands said as they threw her away. Mary was beautiful, but every man who married her left without a child. What they didn't know was that at night, her spiritual husband sleeps with her. He said she was his wife, and no one else could have her. But when he came for her only daughter, Mary knew she had to fight, even if it meant giving her own life. Welcome back. As you enjoy the story, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and also share with your friends. Now back to the story. Mary was born in a small riverside village where everyone knew each other's names and secrets. Her father was a quiet man who carved paddles for fishermen, and her mother sold roasted maize in the market square. Mary grew up with laughter in her voice and beauty in her face, the kind that made people turn twice. She was the kind of young woman every mother wanted for their son. When she turned 19, her parents accepted the bride price from David, a hard-working farmer from the next village. He built her a small mud house with a thatched roof and planted a mango tree in front. At first, life was sweet. She woke early to sweep the yard, fetched water from the stream, and cooked for David when he returned from the fields. They spoke of children often. David wanted 5. She said she would settle for 3. But after the first year, there was no child. In the second year, David's mother began asking questions. She would stop Mary in the middle of pounding yam and ask, "When will you give my son a child?" The tone was sharp, but Mary would force a smile and say, "God will provide." By the third year, the whispers had turned into open talk. Women at the well said she was cursed. Some claimed she had offended the ancestors. Others said she must have had an abortion in secret. David stopped looking her in the eye. One evening, he sat her down and told her to return to her parents. His family had chosen another wife for him. Mary cried until her chest hurt, but she left quietly. Back at her parents' home, she tried to help in the market, but every conversation seemed to turn into pity. A year later, she met Peter, a hunter with strong arms and a proud voice. He told her she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen and promised that with him, life would be different. Mary believed him. They married, and she moved to his hut near the forest's edge. Peter was gentle at first, bringing her meat from his hunts and stories from deep in the bush. But by the second year, the same question returned, "Where is the child?" Peter's mother would come and sit in the doorway, staring at Mary like she was a broken pot. Peter became restless, spending nights away in the forest. When he returned, he brought another woman with him. He didn't even ask Mary to leave. He simply told her there was no space for 2 wives in his heart. Mary returned home again, her head low, her heart heavy. People began calling her the barren one as if it were her name. Her third chance came when Samuel, a trader from a distant village, stopped by the market. He had a quick smile and pockets full of cowries. He said he had heard of her beauty and wanted to give her a fresh start far away from gossip. Mary thought perhaps distance could change her fate. In Samuel's village, no one knew her past. She worked in his small shop, selling salt and dried fish. At night, she cooked and waited for the family she hoped would come. But by the second year, it was the same story. No child, restless husband, whispers that grew into open insults. Samuel did not wait for a third year. One morning, he left with his goods and never returned. 3 marriages, 3 failures. What no one knew was that Mary carried a secret she could never speak aloud. From the time of her first marriage, she had dreams, or perhaps they were not dreams at all. In them, a shadowy man would come to her bed. His voice was deep and cold, telling her she belonged to him. She never saw his face, only the glint of eyes in the dark. No matter how she prayed, the visits continued. She woke each time with a heavy heart, feeling something had been taken from her. By the time she was 30, Mary had stopped hoping. The villagers avoided her as if her misfortune could spread like disease. One rainy evening, after a long day of listening to her mother sigh and her father avoid her eyes, Mary left the house and walked toward the river. She thought of how the water would cover her and silence the shame forever. The river was swollen from the rains, rushing fast under the moonlight. She stood at the bank, her feet sinking into the wet mud, her tears mixing with the drizzle. "Woman," Why are you standing so close to the water at this time?" She turned sharply. A tall man in a worn shirt stood a few paces away, holding a fishing net over his shoulder. His face was lined from years under the sun, but his eyes were kind. "Go back to your house before the river swallows you," he said. Mary shook her head. "There is nothing left for me in the house." The man stepped closer. "Then tell me what is left in the river that is worth your life." Something in his tone made her pause. She told him, haltingly, about her 3 marriages, the shame, the names people called her. She did not tell him about the shadow man in her dreams. Some things were too strange to say aloud. The man listened quietly. "My name is John," he said when she finished. "I am a fisherman. My house is just there, by the bend. Come, eat something warm before the cold kills you faster than the water." Mary hesitated, then followed him. His hut was small but neat, with fishing nets hanging from the rafters and the smell of smoked tilapia in the air. He gave her a bowl of steaming soup and did not ask more questions that night. That was the beginning. Mary stayed in John's hut that night. The rain kept falling, tapping on the roof like a soft drum. She slept on a mat near the fire, and for the first time in years, there were no strange dreams. No shadow man. Just the sound of the river flowing outside. In the morning, John was already gone, but there was roasted fish wrapped in leaves waiting for her. She ate slowly, feeling something she had almost forgotten: peace. When John returned with a basket of fresh fish, he asked nothing about her past. Instead, he told her stories of the river, how some days it gave plenty and other days it gave nothing. He spoke simply, without pity or judgment, and that alone made her want to stay longer. Days turned into weeks. Mary began helping him mend his nets, cook meals, and trade fish in the market. She noticed how people in John's area didn't look at her the way they did in her old village. They didn't know her as the barren one. Here, she was just Mary. Something else was changing too. The heaviness in her chest began to lift. She hadn't realized how much weight she had been carrying until it started to disappear. She no longer woke up frightened from those strange visits in the night. She could breathe again. One evening, while they sat outside watching the sky fade from gold to dark blue, John spoke quietly. "I have never been married," he said. "I have always wanted a family, but my work kept me alone. Now that I am older, I sometimes wish I had someone to come home to." Mary smiled faintly. "Maybe the river kept you for someone." He looked at her then, really looked, and for a moment neither of them spoke. In the weeks that followed, they grew closer. John was not the type to make big promises, but his small acts, bringing her the first fish he caught, making sure her mat was close to the warmest part of the fire, spoke for him. Mary found herself laughing again, and when she laughed, she felt younger. One rainy night, John asked her to stay with him, not as a visitor, but as his wife. She hesitated, her old fears rising. "What if I bring you the same sorrow I brought the others?" John's voice was steady. "Maybe the problem was never you." For the first time, she believed that could be true. They began living as husband and wife. Months passed, and something unexpected happened. Mary fell sick in a way she had never felt before. Her body was tired, her appetite strange. She told John, and he took her to the midwife. The midwife's smile was wide. "You are carrying a child." Mary sat frozen. A child? After all those years of emptiness? Tears ran down her face before she could stop them. John held her hand, his grip warm and sure. The months of her pregnancy were not easy. She still feared it was a dream that would vanish. But John's steady presence kept her calm. The day she went into labor, the whole riverside seemed to wait outside the hut. By nightfall, the cry of a baby filled the air. Mary had given birth to a girl, her skin soft like new maize, her eyes bright even in the lamplight. They named her Rose. From the moment she opened her eyes, it was as if Rose carried a light within her. People came from other villages to see her. Women touched her cheeks and whispered blessings. Men nodded, saying she would grow into a beauty. Years passed quickly. Rose became everything her parents had dreamed of: clever, kind, and more beautiful with each passing season. Her skin was smooth like the inside of a fresh coconut, and her laughter carried across the river. Traders, fishermen, and even chiefs sent word, hoping to arrange a future with her. John and Mary refused all offers. Rose was still young, and they wanted her to live her childhood in peace. But news of her beauty spread farther than they expected. One afternoon, a royal messenger arrived at their hut. He carried the king's seal and spoke with authority. "The prince has heard of a young woman named Rose," he said. "He wishes to see her for himself." Mary's heart tightened. She remembered the life she had left behind, the cruel stares, the whispers. She had found peace here, and she feared the palace would take it away. But John placed a hand on her shoulder. "We cannot stop the tide when it comes," he said. That night, as Mary lay in bed, she couldn't sleep. For the first time in many years, the shadow man returned in her dream. His voice was cold. "She is mine, Mary. Your daughter is mine." She woke up shaking, the old fear rushing back like a flood. She didn't tell John. Not yet. She told herself it was just a dream, but deep inside, she knew it was more than that. The next week, Rose was taken to the palace in a decorated canoe. Drummers beat softly as the canoe moved through the water, and women along the shore sang praise songs. Mary stood at the riverbank with John, watching her daughter disappear around the bend. Her smile hid the storm in her heart. At the palace, the prince welcomed Rose warmly. He was a young man with sharp eyes but a gentle voice. He spoke to her with respect, asking about her family and life by the river. The more they talked, the more he admired her. Within days, he sent word to John and Mary that he wished to marry her. The announcement brought celebration to the riverside village. People danced and called Mary blessed. Some who had once whispered about her now came forward to praise her. But Mary could not forget the dream. The shadow man's words haunted her. "She is mine." That night, she dreamed again. She was standing by the river when the shadow man rose from the water. His form was dark, but his eyes burned like fire. "You think you have escaped me," he said. "You belong to me, and so does your child. If you give her to the prince, she will die before the wedding night." Mary woke with a cry, sweat soaking her wrapper. John stirred beside her. "What is it?" he asked. "Nothing," she said quickly, not wanting to bring the old curse into their home. But inside, she was breaking. As the palace prepared for the wedding, strange things began happening. One morning, Rose woke with deep scratches on her arm. She said she had seen a man in her room, but when she lit the lamp, he was gone. Another night, the kitchen fire burned out suddenly, leaving the entire household in cold darkness. The palace guards whispered of spirits, but no one dared speak openly. Mary's fear grew. She knew these signs. She had lived them for years before John. One afternoon, she went to the market to buy oil, and an old woman selling herbs stopped her. "Your face is heavy with fear," the woman said. "What is chasing you?" Mary shook her head, but the woman's eyes were sharp. "Sometimes the river does not give you a fish, but a chain. And the more you fight, the tighter it holds." The words struck deep. Mary asked where she could find help. The woman leaned closer and whispered about an old healer who lived beyond 3 hills, far from the main road. He was said to know the ways of the spirit world, the kind that binds women to invisible husbands. Mary did not waste time. The next morning, before the sun rose, she left quietly, telling John she was going to visit a friend. She walked for hours, her legs aching, until she reached a small hut surrounded by tall grass. The healer sat outside, grinding herbs. He looked at her once and said, "You should have come years ago." Tears filled Mary's eyes. "Can you help my daughter?" she asked. "You have been bound since your youth," he said. "A spirit claimed you as his wife. Every man you married could not hold you because you already belonged to another. That same spirit now claims your daughter as his own." Mary's hands trembled. "What can I do?" "It will not be easy," the healer said. "The spirit has been with your family for generations. To break the bond, you must face him yourself." He prepared a calabash filled with river water cowrie shells, and leaves. Tonight, when the moon is high, you will see him. You must tell him, with all the strength in your heart, that you belong to no one but the man you chose. If you fail, he will take your daughter." Mary agreed. She stayed at the healer's hut until nightfall. When the moon rose, the healer began chanting, his voice deep and steady. The calabash water rippled, and the air grew cold. Suddenly, the shadow man appeared, rising from the water inside the calabash as if it were a doorway. His voice thundered, "Mary, I have kept you all these years. I gave you beauty, I gave you life. You cannot cast me away." Mary's knees shook, but she stood tall. "You gave me nothing but sorrow," she said. "I am not your wife. My daughter is not your child. We belong to the living, not the dead." The spirit's eyes flared. The ground beneath her feet felt like it was splitting. "If you break the bond, you will pay with your blood," he said. Mary clenched her fists. "Then take my blood. But leave her free." The spirit roared, and the calabash shattered, spilling water across the ground. Mary fell to her knees, her head spinning. The healer's chants grew louder, filling the air until the shadow man's voice faded into nothing. When it was over, Mary lay weak but alive. The healer said the bond was broken. "Your daughter will marry and live," he told her. "But your body will carry the mark of the fight." Mary returned home at dawn. She found John waiting by the river, worry etched into his face. She told him everything, and for a moment he was silent. Then he simply held her close. The wedding went ahead a week later. Rose wore white beads in her hair and a bright wrapper, her smile lighting the whole village. Mary stood at the front, watching her daughter walk toward the prince, knowing the shadow man was gone forever. But inside, she felt a strange ache, not of fear, but of the price she had paid. The day of the wedding was bright and warm. The air smelled of palm wine and roasted meat. Drummers played fast rhythms, and women in colorful wrappers danced in circles, their laughter carrying across the river. The palace courtyard was full, chiefs in red caps, elders in long robes, young men in their finest cloth, and children sitting on the ground with wide eyes. Rose sat under a canopy of palm leaves, her skin glowing, beads around her neck catching the sun. The prince sat beside her, proud and smiling. Every so often, his gaze drifted to her as if to make sure she was real. Mary stood among the guests, but her eyes never left her daughter. She kept remembering the words of the healer, "Your body will carry the mark of the fight." She felt weaker now than she had before the ritual. Climbing stairs left her breathless, and her arms often trembled when she carried heavy things. But she told no one, not even John. The wedding rites went on. Gifts were exchanged, kola nuts broken, prayers said for the couple's long life. When it was time for the final blessing, the oldest chief poured palm wine into a wooden cup and gave it to the prince and Rose to share. The crowd erupted in cheers as they drank. That night, as the celebrations faded and the torches burned low, Mary walked to the river alone. The moon reflected on the water like a sheet of silver. She thought of her own life, 3 husbands who had left her, years of whispers and shame, the nights she had been visited by the shadow man. And then she thought of John, the fisherman who had pulled her away from the river's edge that night. She had found love in the most unexpected place. It wasn't the kind of love that shouts from rooftops. It was the kind that sits with you in silence when the world is too loud. The kind that makes space for your pain without asking for explanations. Footsteps approached. It was John. "Why are you out here alone?" he asked. Mary smiled faintly. "Just thinking." He stood beside her, looking out at the water. "She is safe now," he said. "Yes," Mary whispered. "Safe." In the days after the wedding, Rose moved into the palace. She visited often, bringing baskets of food and fine cloth for her parents. She would sit by Mary's side, braiding her hair and telling her about palace life. The feasts, the guests from faraway lands, the laughter of the prince when they played Io under the moonlight. But Mary noticed something. Whenever Rose spoke of her happiness, Mary felt both joy and a quiet ache. It wasn't jealousy. It was the knowledge that her daughter's freedom had been bought with a fight she could never speak of fully. A fight that had taken part of her strength forever. Months turned into a year. Mary's health slowly weakened. She still worked beside John when she could, but she tired easily. Sometimes she would sit by the river for hours, listening to the water, remembering everything it had seen. Her shame, her rescue, her love, her victory. One evening, Rose came home earlier than usual. She sat beside Mary and took her hand. "Mama, the prince says we will have a child," she said with a shy smile. Mary felt her chest swell with emotion. "Then you must tell the child this story," she said. "What story?" Rose asked. "The story of a woman who married 3 men, but had no husband," Mary said softly. "A woman who was cast away, yet found love in a fisherman's hut. A woman who fought a spirit so her child could live free." Rose's eyes filled with tears. "You have always been more than a mother," she said. "You are my shield." That night, as Mary lay on her mat, she thought of the life she had lived. It had been full of pain, but also of love. She had lost much, but she had also gained the one thing no spirit could take, the choice to love and protect. The river outside whispered in the dark, and for the first time in years, she felt no shadow watching her. Only the memory of John's steady hand and Rose's bright smile. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, subscribe and turn on your notification for more. See you soon.